Hello everybody, Jake, your resident content cowboy here. Yeehaw! We have a new balance patch for Pokemon Unite. In this video, I'm going to be telling you all about it, not just giving you the patch notes, but showing you what they mean. Let's take a look at one of the first and biggest Pokemon to get buffed in this, not just by size, but the volume of buffs, and that would be Tyranitar. First, starting with Tyranitar here, we have some basics. We have HP, defense, and special defense all buffed for this Pokemon. HP, I think it's 150 just across the board. Every single level is 150 higher than it would have been normally. And then defense and special defense are both 20 points higher. For a frame of reference, that's the, exact numbers you would get out of having a level 20 focus band. So defense, special defense wise, that's what you would get out of that. And then 150 HP. Basically, a little more than a stack of an Eos cookie at every level for this Pokemon. The biggest changes are probably to how some of Tyranitar's moves work, like Sand Tomb and Stone Edge. For Stone Edge, the time between the first and second casts are reduced, so you can kind of use this move a little quicker against your opponents. I've always used Stone Edge as sort of a razor claw instigator. That's how I like playing this move. I slam it, immediately auto, slam it, immediately auto, slam it, immediately auto, and that's what I'm looking to do. You get 2 Razor Claw procs if you're usually using it like that, because your moves are used so, quickly next to each other that the second one doesn't proc. But I just use that a lot to get a ton of damage onto my opponents and try to hit them as many times as I can with a Razor Claw to get extra damage and of course slow them down. The other change was to Sand Tomb. So now Sand Tomb will stun longer, which I'll show you, and the intensity of the slow is increased. Not only that, you're able to use the sort of big sand wave that pulls enemies towards you faster after you land. So you see this little, thank you for the telekinesis, buddy. Do you see this little area here between where I'm landing and where I'm jumping from, that kind of like those 3 arrows there? That is where you're leaping. Anything in that leap or where exactly where you're landing is going to stun. You'll see Slowbro stunned here as soon as he stops doing that to me. Thank you, Slowbro. I really appreciate that while I'm trying to make a video, buddy. He just telekinesis me as I casted Sand Tomb. Okay, so as you jump into him, boop, you see that stun right there? He's got the daze above his head, right? Now it's faster after you cast that, and the next time you use that wave to pull enemies close to you, this is gonna make it easier to fight, and of course, the slow is gonna help as well, right? So if you jump into your opponent, you stun them, you pull them with the wave, Stone Edge, hit them again, Stone Edge, hit them again, you'll just be able to rip them apart pretty fast in this Sand Tomb. You also, of course, to get a little extra distance if you need to, you can eject button your Sand Tomb so you get that stun a little bit easier, and then onto the other side of your opponents, pulling them closer to you with that wave. These are all really nice buffs, absolutely needed. A Pokemon that is good, but just really hasn't found its place, especially in the high-end meta. So I think all of these changes are really nice for Tyranitar. I've been talking a while about how this Pokemon isn't bad. It's just for the amount of energy you have to put in to get Tyranitar, you would hope it would be a little stronger. So HP across the board, defense across the board, and making its moves a little better is a great start. And this might actually make this Pokemon more of a meta choice, and it might make Stone Edge an even more viable option too, because I feel like this move has always kind of played second fiddle to Dark Pulse, just given the fact that Dark Pulse stuns and lets you move around with it. Our next Pokemon to receive some buffs was Metagross. This is an interesting one because Metagross was already doing really well. I'm not surprised to see Zen Headbutt get a buff. I'm surprised it's just to the damage of Zen Headbutt, but Zen Headbutt, Gyro Ball, and your Unite move all got buffs. Each one of them is going to do more damage now. It looks like it's somewhere roughly between like 10% for Gyro Ball, 15%-ish for Zen Headbutt, excuse me, 15% for your Unite move, and then it's something like 13% for Zen Headbutt. Now that could all kind of change. They all do scale based off your attack stat, right? So there is, a possibility that depending on how high your attack is, how stacked up you are, your weakness policy, your mileage will vary. But just in general, these are nice little quality of life buffs for Metagross, making it stronger in just about every build that you're going to play with it. Whether you run Zen Headbutt or you play Magnet Rise, you'll still be able to get more value out of Gyro Ball, which is is more often than not the preferred move set for meta. It's really strong, it's easy to get your big shields with it, and now your Unite move feels like it actually opens up more opportunities for a better execute, right? If it's able to do more damage, it's able to execute more. If it executes, it does refund some of the cost of your Unite, which could be pretty solid. In general, I think this Pokemon was doing really well, but just underplayed. So they wanted to kind of buff it to bring it into more relevance, which makes sense. It's a pretty recent release, and I think people moved off it pretty quickly. I'll show the Unite real quick here on my slowest of bro. We'll try to get him a little low here. I don't think it'll KO him because he's a slow bro, but hey, it did. We're a level 12. He was a level 8. So there you go. And you will get some of your Unite move refunded when that happens in a match, which is pretty cool. And then Zen Headbutt doing a little more damage will just make it a better engage tool, because even though I would rather Zen Headbutt give you a bigger kind of defense bonus when it hits, like its plus move does, I do think giving it a damage increase is just going to set up more opportunities for you to pick up KOs, which is pretty dang important when you dive into the enemy team. Everyone's favorite Pokemon to KO and play, honestly, Decidueye got some buffs to its controversial Razor Leaf build. Here's the thing, Razor Leaf is so fun, and also it's such a mess sometimes, and for some reason, every bad Decidueye loves to play Razor Leaf. It's a tough move set to get to work well because you're so squishy that even though you're playing at kind of decent range, the enemies can still jump in and get you. So what did they change about Razor Leaf? Well, as you can see, when you cast it here and you start hitting with it, by the time it's done, you only have about 2 seconds of downtime here on this move, a little over 2. I do have a blue buff on my Decidueye right now, but you can see that you're gonna have this up most of the time you're engaging with enemies. There'll be brief moments where it's down, and then you'll be able to power it back up. You can more reliably use it to farm right now, and you can just more reliably have it up in all of the team fights, which you absolutely need to do. It's the whole point of the move, is that you can rip people apart with it, getting that extra damage, giving yourself some really nice lifesteal. They also buffed and then nerfed Leaf Storm. Leaf Storm, this secondary move here. I think a big thought behind this is Decidueye is one of the easiest Pokemon to dive in the game, and they want to give you an option to make sure that people who try to dive you are actually punished for it, and Leaf Storm is that option for Decidueye. Changing its cooldown kind of makes sense. They increase the damage of it pretty good, so it actually does solid damage when you use it. Of course, if you use it and enemies are close to you, it will shove them, right? And if you hit an enemy with it now, the move speed decrease is pretty considerable. It used to be 45%, now it's 60%. It decays a little over time. So ideally, you would be fighting your opponents, you know, you'd be trying to like keep them at range, kite them with a move like this, and then if they decide to come in, you shove them back with your Leaf Storm. It's gonna do some damage, it's gonna mess with them a bit, and again, it's gonna give them that big time slow, an even bigger slow than before. Oh, he's gonna Unite me immediately. I knew it. I knew it. So he's going to try to come in on me. It probably will work because he united me. But you can push him back right there, get him a good slow, and try to peel back from a fight like that, continuing to hit with your Razor Leaf. Hopefully enough so you can get some life steal and then eventually pick up a KO, right? That would be the idea behind the change here with Decidueye. And it's just really nice to be able to have your move up so often that you can kind of reliably just have Razor Leaf on basically no cooldown as you're moving around the map. Everyone's favorite Cramorant got some buffs. It's surprising because for the longest time, Cramorant would get these weird nerfs that just kind of came out of nowhere. Cramorant got buffs to Dive and to Hurricane. You don't often see Dive and Hurricane paired together, even though you can use it as sort of, you know, you set up KOs with it, you hit them with Hurricanes, then you move in with Dive and start doing some damage. More often, you'll see Hurricane and Surf, and then you will see Dive and Air Slash. But let's talk about each one. So Dive just now has a cooldown reduction in the time it will take you to store up another charge of Dive. This just gives you more opportunities to outplay your opponents with honestly one of the best outplay moves in the entire game. As you're seeing, there are so many areas on Thea Sky Ruins where you can actually get, you know, completely around your opponents, and very few dashes are able to close the distance. and keep up with Cram. So Cram can use this to sort of dance around their opponents, kite them, hit them, back up with air slash, move back around. Real high skilled Cram players are a thing of beauty because it is a massive outplay potential Pokemon, and it's really, really fun once you start to get the hang of Dive, right? And then of course, Hurricane is going to be doing more damage now. This is going to set up opportunities to, yes, play it possibly with a Dive build, but more just give you the ability to sort of play Mage Cram and have some more success with it. Mage Cram is something like this here: Hurricane and Surf. Oftentimes, someone would look for their opportunity to hit the opponent with a Hurricane, right? If they could then land a Surf right into a big time boosted and hopefully get a KO. Now that Hurricane is giving you some more damage, and it already pairs really well with Surf cooldown wise, I think you could see more and more Mage Cram being played. Dive and Hurricane is a possibility. I know some teams would run it coming out of the jungle, but I think more likely you're going to see something like Surf Hurricane or Dive Air Slash. Nice little buffs to Cram, and they said in the patch notes the whole reason behind this was they wanted this Pokemon to get a little more usage, and I think that's a great way to buff a Pokemon. It wasn't bad, and these are nice little buffs that could make it more viable and more picked. Blissey received buffs to Helping Hand and Safeguard. Helping Hand is now going to give you a 35% attack speed and move speed increase, up from 30%, and the duration of the shield on Safeguard is increased an additional second. A little while back, Blissey was sort of the victim of Mewtwo Y nerfs that also ended up targeting Blissey, because Blissey and Mewtwo Y were kind of like the dynamic duo of ruining everyone's day. Because of Mewtwo Y, Blissey received kind of the Safeguard Helping Hand nerfs a little while back, and now that Mewtwo Y isn't really the thing it was, and we're kind of past that awful point in the meta, they're actually giving people an opportunity to pick this up. Pairing it with Pokemon that do a lot of auto attacks, you know, things like your ADCs and stuff like that, you could set up some really incredible fights for your team. Again, a 35% attack speed increase and move speed increase is very solid, and then Safeguard for an extra second just gives your team a little longer to engage while not being stunned. Now let's move on to Pokemon who got some nerfs. Mew is one of them, and I gotta be honest, I'm not super surprised. Mew is crazy good. It has been essentially forever. Even after a recent nerf to Solar Beam, this thing has just still been doing insane work, especially on a competitive level. So its special attack has been nerfed. You can see it here, but basically it's a small nerf leading up to about 50 points difference at max level. You could mitigate that by stacking on Mew. For a little while, players were stacking Mew, but I don't think this is going to be the biggest change ever. It also received a nerf to its boosted attack damage. So that is the attack you just saw where you kind of throw that one hit, you can walk away from your opponents, it does more damage the further you are. It's crazy strong. It's always been crazy strong. Remember Release Mew? My goodness. And now this is just going to do a little less damage to your opponents. It also received a nerf on its Unite move. It received this recently, and it's getting it again. It's not intended to only be used as a damaging move, even though it does some solid damage. This is now the second nerf to the amount of damage its Unite move has done. They obviously are still letting it be used for incredible amounts of utility, but they don't want you to be using it to fight your opponents as much as they want you to be using it for the utility factor it provides. I don't think these changes to Mew, just like the last ones that people were saying were going to ruin it, are going to ruin it. I still think Mew is going to be pretty nuts. Gyarados got a nerf, a pretty simple one, a Unite move cooldown nerf from 89 seconds essentially to 112. This is a very reasonable nerf for this Pokemon. It's been very, very good. Its Unite move is on an insane cooldown. It's really powerful. This is going to make Energy Amp possibly a little less, prominent on this Pokemon, but at the same time, now you may really want it, so you're able to charge that Unite move a little bit faster. No question, Gyarados is still going to be a beast. They really didn't do much to this to just give it, a little bit of a slap on the wrist during its Unite move, which it's already crazy, crazy good, right? It's going to make it a little harder to charge. You're not going to have it as often, but I don't think this is going to be a big change to this Pokemon really at all. Gyarados is still really strong. I'm not at all surprised that we see some nerfs here to Fire Blast, Fire Spin, Delphox. I do think it's way too powerful. It's probably still a little too powerful, but we've got a cooldown increase on Fire Spin. It's another half second after you cast it before it comes back up, and the chase duration has been decreased by a second. This is nice, even though I think this is still going to be extremely good. And then Fire Blast has some damage reduction kind of across the board between Fire Blast's first hit, second hit, as well as the plus move. The official patch notes say this is about 10%. Unite DB has got the exact numbers here that you can see, but I do think this is a pretty reasonable change to Delphox overall. This build's nuts. It's been like way too good for how easy it is to do damage, how easy it is to displace your opponents. I still think it's going to be pretty nuts. One thing you could do if you are really worried about that half-second change to your Fire Spin, you could start running Mystical Fire with Fire Spin. This is a build that some people like to use because if you cast out Mystical Fire and then hit with your Fire Spin, you do get that cooldown reduction. It's more prominent when you hit an enemy Pokemon as opposed to hitting a wild Pokemon, but you can see right there, me hitting that, I get a cooldown reduction to both my Mystical Fire and my Fire Spin. So this might be more of an option if you are concerned with that change to its cooldown. In general, though, I feel like a lot of the nerfs we've been seeing in Unite recently are just sort of they're being very careful to not gut the Pokemon, which I do think makes a lot of sense. We don't want something to become irrelevant, right? You just kind of want it to be not so ridiculously overpowered. We'll see if this is enough of a change to Delphox or not. I still think this moveset's going to be pretty crazy. Glacial, a Pokemon that is so unbelievably good for how simple it is to use. I think this thing has had many nerfs that are probably still needed, but it makes sense that we see some nerfs for it, especially with how prominent it is even competitively. When you have Pokemon that are so good that even top mechanical skill players are using them when the Pokemon requires very little mechanical skill, you know that something is pretty up with Glacial. Ice Shard and Icicle Spear got changed. So Ice Shard is going to give you a smaller move speed increase. You'll notice when you use Ice Shard, you kind of get this little boost right there. It's a half-second move speed increase burst. It used to be 50%, now it's 40%. And then for Icicle Spear, you're getting what looks to be about a 10% damage reduction kind of across the board. It probably could still use a little more, but with everything like this, I actually do appreciate that we are kind of going in and trying bit by bit to make something a little more balanced, rather again than just destroying something even if something is really, really powerful. The only exception is when something is dummy broken, like Mewtwo or Zacian or something. Like, please nerf that thing with fire. But in general, I would like to see kind of how this feels inside of a match. I bet you it's gonna feel pretty similar. Saving the best or the biggest nerfs for last, we have Blastoise, and this is a Pokemon that's really, really needed nerfs for a while. It's crazy good. I love Blastoise, but my goodness gracious. Here we go. First off, Water Gun is getting a nerf. This is just going to make it a little tougher to secure some of these last hits with Water Gun. We've seen Pokemon that have insane secure tools like this get nerfed before. Obviously, the Water Gun on Inteleon got nerfed. Things like this can just be a little too powerful, especially when they also offer an element of crowd control by pushing things around the battlefield. So it's just going to make it a little harder to secure your last hits. Now, a couple of the other big nerfs here. Let's evolve into Blastoise and start taking a look at them. Hydro Pump. Hydro Pump is going to do less damage, and it is also going to stun for less time. We kind of had that infinite Blastoise combo that was just so tough for people to deal with, and that's gonna not be as relevant when this Hydro Pump stuns for about half the time, going from 1 second to 0.6 seconds. I still think it's going to be really strong, but it is nice that we actually get to see a little bit of a change here. We have more changes. There's actually a lot here. So Hydro Pump is also changed if you happen to be running, you know, the Spin Pump build. So they're worried about this thing basically doing too much damage and doing too much stun. So during the spin, it is also going to deal less damage in kind of that burst moment right there. And I have to assume that it's also doing a smaller stun during the push inside of that as well. So they're just really looking for Hydro Pump to do way less damage, have way less of a stun factor. Their big talk in the patch notes on the Japanese website was they loved that it could do multiple rolls, but it just did too much damage for a defensive type Pokemon. Continuing the thought of dealing too much damage, they have also nerfed Water Spout, and then of course Water Spout during Rapid Spin. So this is going to kind of take away the option for Rapid Spin Water Spout Blastoise to be as strong of a carry. I'm a little more conflicted on this change, I have to be honest, because while I do think it's a solid carry, and as a defender, it's kind of like odd for it to be set up as maybe a carry Pokemon in this way. I always thought it was cool that Blastoise had a lot of different build options and could wear a lot of different hats in a match. Again, I'm not sure how relevant the changes will feel. It'll still feel like a strong carry even with some of these nerfs. We're going to have to see. As always, I don't want its movesets to become irrelevant, but I do get it, because Blastoise has been way too good for way too long, and it totally makes sense that this thing is going to start to get some nerfs. It is without question one of the, you know, Pokemon that has avoided the nerfs for the longest time. There are a few others that really missed this patch. We'll talk about winners and losers tomorrow when I have more time to test everything. I should also make mention that Blastoise right here is going to get KO'd, and your emblem bonus is going to stay with you. The emblem color bonus was fixed. For a little while when you got KO'd, your emblem color bonuses, like your 6 white, 6 brown, whatever you had on your Pokemon, they went away after the first KO of a match. It was this weird bug. It happened a couple weeks ago after the last update, and now that is fixed, so your emblems are back to normal. Let me know what you think of this patch in the comments. Again, I want more time with it. As always, I would love more changes, more aggressive changes, especially to Pokemon that aren't being played so much, but I'd love to hear from you. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. I hope you enjoyed the tournament over the weekend, and I'll be streaming tomorrow. Love you. We did it.